Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants for today. And we will be starting our webinar in short while. Kindly switch off your mic and cameras. Okay, can I have the next? Okay, thank you once again to join another interesting webinar from Securiton. A warm welcome to all the audience today. Without any further ado, I will proceed with the agenda for today. As for the topic of today, we are looking into FidesNet, a networking system from Securiton. With me today is my partner, Mr. Pascal Huni. And before that, let me, myself is Thielen from Securiton, and I'm within the organization for the past 14 years, and I'm taking care of Sales International and all the technical support from us and from myself. And with me today is Mr. Pascaloni. Mr. Pascal, can you just say hi to everyone?
Hi together.
Hi. Okay, he has been with Securiton past few years and with the experience of 10 years with product management, and he's the man behind the brain of this FidesNet. And his experience has been a great advantage to us to come up with the FidesNet. He was the backbone of creating this FidesNet. That's the reason we also put Mr. Pascal to come up with this webinar to explain more about the details for today. And we will go to the agenda for today. Next slide, please, Pascal. And we will be having 5 topics, including the first few introductions from my side. That will be introduction of remote device system, the FidesNet itself, and the user benefit, code and practices, followed by the FidesNet product itself and the conclusion. So the FidesNet will be explained by Mr. Pascal. As I said, mentioned, is the man behind the product, so he knows in details about the product. So all the questions can be raised once we have finished the entire session today. So without further ado, I will go to the introduction. Okay, good. So what we know about remote device. So what is remote and what is control device and what is display unit? So display unit is actually an electronic device that is used in industrial control system, which can centralize the entire remote unit and different units at the field. So we may have products in the field and we could have difficulties to access one and every, not to say difficulties, but also time taken to access to each and every individual devices in the field. Just to shorten the process, we do have come up with an accessories, or we call it added accessories, to shorten the length of accessing to the device, called remote device. We know from the beginning we have remote control, remote devices, it's the same. So we have a remote device that works from a control unit, usually in an industrial application, and we can control, access, and view all the information from the central unit. So that's all about remote control or a display unit. Okay, and what does the remote display does? A remote display is a protocol or a special set of data transfer which rules that makes it possible to view from central area. Okay, so there are protocols available that we control. Normally we works in LAN control, LAN protocol, RS485. In our case, we have both those access, which will be explained in details later. Also, what does the remote gives you an opportunity is to get the alarm status over the network for smoke detection system. If you look into our system today, we have ASD, which is connected in the field, and the usual most crucial informations we needed at the central would be alarm and fault and other relevant information, which will be ran through the protocol and received at the control station. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So we look into the benefits of remote control or display unit. What we know about the industrial is the remote is always to operate the device or the machine without interfering with each of the field devices. So to make life easy. So that's why we call it easy to use. So we make the access to the field devices from the remote display. So it's convenience, one of the best choice, and the simplicity because it allows you for a quick switch between the different systems in the field at the control station. And another benefit is less physical care is important. So if you have problems, you can access from the remote itself, and it's easy to handle with a universal remote system. And it keeps away from physical damages going to the site and find out later. So you can easily access, find all the relevant information, including fault, alarm, and other specific information. And we can detect, we can go to the specific. So it shortened the times as well. This overall puts you in an increased productivity in terms of maintenance and becomes easier to view and monitor. So even every maintenance, you need to go into an individual, but you can prioritize by going to the problematics or issues that we face by looking from the remote access itself. So easy to use, less physical care, and increased productivity. These are the main criteria of having a remote access unit or a remote control unit. Next slide, please. So with that notes in mind, and there are a few advantages that we can look into of having FidesNet, or we call it the remote access unit. That would be, say, for example, increased safety. So the safety of an employee is a core issue sometimes. So see some other access or areas, it's limited access for technicians to go in. That can be a lab or a prisons or an unaccessed area by humans. So it's not difficult to get information. So it's depending the situation. So that remote control or display unit, it's much better in terms of the safety over the field, in terms of the control and get access and also information of it. So in the other word, remote controls of the machine gives you a better overview of allows you to read quicker in terms of emergency situations rather than going to each and individual devices on the field. And talking about hazardous, I mentioned about hazardous zone is always an issue to get an access. So you need to get an access, you need to get your full suits in order to get into the lab to get your access and information. So lots of procedures are involved in order to get into the device in the field. So this will shorten your life when you have an access through the remote access unit, thanks to FidesNet. And in terms of maintenance, as I mentioned earlier, we can maintain the system, of course, by looking into what are the problems that the field devices have given through the information flows into the FidesNet and viewed in the remote access unit. So we can centralize all this information, write down what are the things needed for immediate maintenance or which are needed a due maintenance in time. All this information can be derived from the FidesNet at the control unit itself rather than accessing each and individual devices. And last but not least, individual design and comfort. So remote control can provide improved usability and down in the last detail. So you can get all the information since it's our FidesNet also gives you a control and a viewing. So you can view and get all the information. What are the information will be discussed in detail by Mr. Pascaloni later. So this are all the information you can get in terms of the usability, and you can get all easy comfort at the access itself. Good. With that note, I'll go to the next section. Next slide, please. And here I'll be covering about what standard has to say when it comes to usage of remote access unit. So here you need to look into two sections. So the first section, as you can see, is the physical limits of the ASD itself. On your left is all what we need to know, or we need to fulfill all the relevant requirements. First, the physical limits of the ASD, what the ASD can do, what is the limitations of the ASD, followed by what the standard says of using an ASD. That falls under EN 54-20 specifications, where we specify our system into. And further down here, we must look into all other relevant codes and conducts in individual countries. For example, see, EN 54 is widely used or must be used in European nations, countries. But when we look into other nations, for example, Americans or American-related countries which using or follows their standard, yet we have NFPA. So you can also use NFPA codes and standards to come to designing the systems of ASD and whatsoever not. And the spacing and relevant number of holes are depending on country specific. For example, in Germany, they have BDE and BDS. And in terms of Switzerland, they have SES. And in Malaysia, for example, we have Malaysia Bomba. And in India, they have Indian standards, and so on and so forth for different countries and regions. They are country specific, so you need to follow the design. Those are the standards only applies for ASD application. So the communication is still the same. And when it comes to FidesNet or any remote access unit, it does not comply with any of the standards of EN54, because what the reason behind is it is an added accessories. When we talk about added accessories, it is an accessories to enhance humans or accessibility towards the ASD. That's all. But we must be very careful in terms of connections. What we provide here is RS485 technology, which will communicate from each and every ASD from the field. For example, we can go up to 250 number of devices can be connected, or 100 devices when it comes to FidesNet, and those devices can be connected to the central unit, and from the central unit, it can be accessed in remote access unit, which is the RCU and the NCU, which will be explained in details in a short while. And there are further proprietary protocols available, can be given to third party. I'm very sure the added accessories in the control room can added values. What are the values? We can give some signals from the system to other third-party application. For example, they have SCADA and IBMS systems incorporated in the specific project. So we have given SMNP as well as Modbus IP, which is ready available inside the NCU module itself. So we have both technologies that are available. And in terms of connection, if you remember or you see from the presentation slide, there's RS485 technology. And talking about a common question that I always get during presentations and information, because people are going wireless. So is wireless applicable? So wireless, again, as I said, standard does not recognize wireless because various reasons of the risk that impose from wireless communication. So in terms of the more devices are connected, especially during high network times and day, the greater in reductions of performance and reliabilities can be seen with the connections of wireless. So this will pose a risk in terms of better connections or a continuous connection. So through wireless networks, it becomes more secure by years, but I know things are improving, but it still can be hacked and your data can be interpreted by hackers. So for that reasons, wireless connections are highly not recommended to use a specific wired connection, which is RS485, or a LAN connection. So these two both connections can be used to enhance the connectivity. Okay, so that's all from my side in terms of the introductions of the FidesNet, and as well as what is remote access unit and what about standard says about using the added accessories with our ASD. Now, without further ado, I'll pass it to Mr. Pascal to explain further in details about every details of FidesNet and its components. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Pascal.
Okay, thanks, Seelan. So my name is Pascal. As Seelan said before, I'm working as product manager now since 5 years for Securiton, and I was one of the initiator of FidesNet. So now have a look inside of FidesNet. Basically, we have two main components. On the left side, you can see the NCU 900, the network control unit. And it's the main communication hub of the whole FidesNet communication. We have on the NCU one RS485 port, so you can connect then the ASDs from the field to it. And we have also two Ethernet ports. So it's also possible for an ASD 532, for example, to connect it directly to Ethernet. All the communication is stored inside of the NCU, and we have it available as a 19-inch rack mounting version. On the right side, you can see the RCU, so the remote control unit. That's a 7-inch touch color display. We have it also available in a mounting frame for a 19-inch rack. And we are working at the moment on a standalone version that 19-inch rack is not needed anymore. Good. Then when we have a look to the system structure, we have basically 3 levels. So Ethernet is the red part. You can connect the RCU, 1 or up to 50 RCUs via Ethernet to the NCU. You can also use an ASD config for technicians, for example, over Ethernet to connect it directly to the NCU. And then you have the access to the whole ASD network. So it's not anymore needed that you go directly to each ASD. You can just connect to the NCU and you have the connection to the whole network. And for the last very important point on the Ethernet level is the connection to a third-party management system via Modbus or also SNMP. So that's quite important, I think, because the data measured in the field is interesting for many other people, not only the events, so like alarm or fault, also the measured data can be transmitted. Then the blue part is the RS485 part. All the ASDs can be connected. The only thing you need is a RS485 accessory module, the SIM35 module. In the middle, the yellow part is the NCU. Up to 100 ASDs can be connected in total. Doesn't matter if they are on the Ethernet or on the RS485 level. The total number is up to 100, and also 50 RCUs, depending on the project. You can place everywhere an RCU, but the maximum is limited to 50. So when we have a deeper look now to the remote control unit, the RCU 700, we have an integrated buzzer. So whenever you have an alarm or a fault, you have a visual signal by color, but you can also have this integrated buzzer to have then really a sign to the technician that something is not good. Then we have the Ethernet port. Like I said before, we have it done with power over Ethernet, so PoE. Whenever it's possible, it's quite easy. No need for an external power supply. Just use the Ethernet port and to power up the device. When the power over Ethernet is not possible, we have, of course, an external connection for a power supply. We have 2 different mounting frames. Depending on the project, perhaps you need 1 RCU or more than 1 or 2 RCUs, then you can choose between the 2 mounting frames. Good. Then, and when we go even more deeper in the details for the RCU, we have a couple of display views. So on the left picture, this device list, that's the list of all the connected ASDs. Doesn't matter if they are on the Ethernet or on the RS485 part. You can have up to 100 ASDs, and they are sorted automatically depending on the event. So a fire event, of course, is the highest priority. Then you can have a pre-signal or a fault or an isolation. And like you can see, they have different colors. So depending on the event level, the color changes. The red picture is the dashboard, so that's a detail view. So when you click on one of the ASD in the device list, then you go to the dashboard and you have a detail view for each ASD. You have live values for the smoke and also the airflow. And you can also do some first manipulations. So you can do a reset of the device, and you can also do an isolation by channel. In the next display views, we have also a trending integrated up to 300 seconds live view trending for smoke and airflow. It's quite a nice feature when a technician is on site and doing some tests, some smoke tests, then you have direct live feedback from the ASD. And the event memory on the right picture is a list of all the events. So a fire or reset event, an isolation, and also the total number is 50 events per ASD. So when you have a FidesNet network with 100 ASDs, then you have 50 events per ASD, so 5,000 events you can have in total. The last two pictures, the last two display views I want to share, and that's quite new, we have launched it this year, is the programmer function. So from one RCU, you can connect to all the network, so all the ASDs, and you can change the parameters of all the connected ASDs. You can change the alarm threshold, the airflow monitoring window. You can also change the fan level if this is needed. You can also do an airflow calibration from remote. And to have a high level of security, of course, we have it pin protected. So during the setup of the system, you can set the pin you like to have. It's also possible, that's the right picture, to have events released from the RCU. So for a test purpose, it's important that you test all the events. So what happens when a fault or a fire occurs, then you can force these events. And you can also force each relay contact from the ASD. So when you have a RIM module inside, that's an expanded relay module, you can also release all these relays from the RCU. So when I move forward to the NCU, this brain of the whole FidesNet network, we have two Ethernet ports. One is also with PoE, so power supply can be also used for the NCU from the Ethernet switch, and we have a second one without PoE possibility. Important is, like I said before, it's possible to access directly to two different subnets. And yeah, that's quite important when you have, for example, on one Ethernet port, Modbus interface, which is going to the building management system. This will, of course, have another subnet mask than connected ASDs. Then the second point is we have an RS485 connection up to 1000 meters to connect all the ASDs. We have on the front, and that's quite simple, no complicated LCD display. We have just two LEDs. One is for power, that's a green one, and the yellow one is fault. So whenever the NCU has a problem, it will indicate the yellow LED, and then you can go to the RCU, so to the remote control unit, this nice 7-inch color touch display, and you can have a look what exactly is the problem. Good. That was it from this technical view. Then, of course, we have user benefits. I just go on the next slide. We have basically four user benefits. So the first one is remote visualization. So like my colleague Seelan said before, access to each ASD is not always possible. So in an access restriction zone, like at the airport, a chemical plant, or a laboratory, it's not so easy to grant access to all the technicians. So whenever you need just a visualization, it's really highly recommended that you use a remote visualization. The second user benefit is a connection to a higher level system, like building management systems, for example, for a process control. we have for this onboard Modbus and SNMP protocol. So it's no need to add or buy additional hardware. It's really on board and you can use it. Then the remote parameterization. That's this new feature we have added. It's basically the programmer function. So it's no need for the technician to go to each ASD to change an airflow value, for example, or a smoke level. You can do this by remote. So just go to the RCU, choose the ASD you want to change some parameters, and it's done. The fourth user benefit is the central visualization. So it's no need to go to each ASD individually. So this saves money. The maintenance, for example, is done very fast. And you are much quicker and you can do by day more maintenance work. Good. This is the moment, Zach, for the questions.
Yes, Pascal, I've got a few questions to be asked. And the first one is, what are the typical use cases for FidesNet?
Okay, thanks, Zach. So, like I said before, typical use cases are remote visualization. Like for a, like for an access restriction zone where it's not possible to enter the zone. So connection to the ASD, it is then the easiest way to have the access for all the technician. So you put the remote control unit outside of this restricted access zone, and you have always the access to the ASD.
All right, the next question is, how many ASDs can be connected to FidesNet?
100. So 100 ASDs can be connected over RS485 or Ethernet. Doesn't matter RS485 or Ethernet, but the total number is 100 ASD.
All right, so are there integrated protocols available to connect FidesNet to a higher level system?
Yes. Like I said before, we have Modbus and SNMP protocol on board. And what's important is no need to have additional hardware. So we have it really on board, and in the price of FidesNet, all the protocols are already in.
So there's a question from a attendee. They're asking, could you please repeat why your system doesn't use Wi-Fi connection? I have noticed that some other companies are using it.
Okay. Shall I take the leads to answer this question?
Yeah, please.
So, as I mentioned earlier before, the strength of the Wi-Fi is always changes according to the location where it is. So the wireless strength can be the same now and can be even changed within months, weeks, depending on changes in the office or the environment or the traffics inside the Wi-Fi. So to achieve the best Wi-Fi connectivity is always a question. So it poses a risk because this is a safety system. A safety system, in the other word, produces alarm and fault, and which is alarm is the priority. So we cannot jeopardize our life by using a Wi-Fi connections and making it impossible to get information in fast manner. You can use Wi-Fi if you want because it's a LAN connection, but it's highly not recommended due to the issues that I mentioned here. Because when you have a LAN, you can connect to a Wi-Fi router and you can still use it. But again, as I mentioned, I repeat, not recommended due to the reason I mentioned. Again, we must compromise the system because it's a fire alarm related system. Good. Any other questions?
Thank you, Seelan. We don't have any questions. I've just got one now. Can one RCU display the data of 2 NCUs?
So I will take this question over. No, that's not possible. So we have always one NCU as a communication master, and then you can have the data of one NCU on several RCUs, but not the opposite.
All right. Thank you, Pascal. We don't have any further questions. You might please continue with the slides.
Okay. So we are quite active on social media. So LinkedIn, we have around 3,000 followers. We are posting twice a week at least projects we are doing, news from the company, and it's a good way to have it, to have an up-to-date information about the company, so Securiton, and yeah, we are waiting that you will follow us. And beside of LinkedIn, we are also active on Instagram. I don't know by heart how many followers we have, but on Instagram you can have more a deep dive to the company behind the scenes. So whenever is a salesman is traveling in the world, then normally we'll have a nice video or a nice picture on Instagram. And beside LinkedIn and Instagram, we also are active on YouTube. We have a lot of product videos and also all the webinars. So I think also this webinar here will be stored then on YouTube. And whenever you need to know a little bit something about a webinar you have missed, for example, then you can go to YouTube, have a look for Securiton International, and you will find the video of this webinar.
So thank you, Pascal. So there's another question, and if we have ASD 532, can we connect directly to the Ethernet port for FidesNet, or still we need SIM35 card for the networking?
Dylan, I take this question over when it's okay. So
Yes, please.
ASD 532 can be connected directly to the NCU via Ethernet. It's also possible to use a SIM card if you have done the project with an RS485 network. That's not a problem, but you can connect it, yes, directly to the NCU over Ethernet.
All right. The next question is it possible to view features like filter life on the RCU?
No, the filter life is not possible on the RCU. But you will have a fault when the filter lifetime is over. Then you will have a fault from the ASD that the filter life is over, and then you will have the fault.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I don't see any questions in the chat. So basically, we could stop the webinar. So I thank everybody for attending the webinar, and we look forward to see you at our next webinar on 26th of May. It's a Securify introduction. And thank you, Pascal, and thank you, Seelan, for the webinar.
No problem.
No
Bye.
problem. Thank you so much for everyone.